Hi guys, in this verse the Bhagavad Gita talks about the working of the human nature. The verse simply says that all our present acts are actually denoted by our past acts, and this act must run its course. Now, what do we mean by that? I was actually really confused when I first read this verse, because if the nature of our past acts is based on our past birth as per the Bhagavad Gita, and those acts from the previous birth gets carried on to this, and that makes us work in a normal way in this life, and it determines whatever is the situation that we face in the present world. Now, I cannot tell you for sure whether this is actually real or not, whether your past acts will have a role to play or not, because this is something that nobody can say, because it is really not in our hands. What we have is just the present, because as per the Bhagavad Gita, clinging on to the past is as bad as expecting something for the future. So here what we can really simply do is just to stay in the present. And now some people would call this awareness in the present. Regardless of that, while we are staying in the present, we are able to eliminate any sort of sorrows or regrets of the past and any sort of expectations in the future. This is what the Bhagavad Gita calls as a person who is stable in nature. But however, let's go back to that verse for 1 second. When they say that your past acts will be predominant in your present birth, there is a little more truth to it than completely discarding it altogether. Now, if we take a look at it in psychological terms, you take someone at the age of 3 or 4, they would show some magical traits at a very young age. Now, I'm just not talking about insanely successful people. Sometimes someone had started playing the music at the age of 4, or someone started holding a cricket bat at the age of 4. But generally, a small kid would be so fascinated in numbers at age 4. I'm 20 years old and I'm still not fascinated by numbers. Maybe that shows the nature of that child, as opposed to even when I am 20, I'm still not fascinated by numbers. So just like I know that numbers is not my nature, that kid subconsciously knows that numbers are its nature. So here, these kind of things at age 4, age 5, when you get it, it is not something that is developed by skill. It is something that is present innate within you. Now this, the most logical explanation, maybe could not exist at all. But here is where the Bhagavad Gita comes into play. For a situation like that, where some acts that you do in your present world, it might have a past reconnection, seems ever so appealing in this particular case. But regardless of that, these things are not in our control. What we can do is, regardless of how bad our past acts have been or could have been, or even if we take it in an optimistic direction, even if our past acts were good, that does not mean that we remain complacent in the present. We should always do one random act of kindness at a time, and we would be surprised at that amount of goodwill that we generate, which would be useful to us sometime in the future. We would not know when. It could be 10, 15 or even 30 years down the line. Those acts might be suitable and good for us. So throughout the Bhagavad Gita, there is a fight, or rather a game that is being played between the nature and that of the soul. See, the nature is everything that happens in this universe. All the good, all the bad, all the ugly, everything happens in nature. And the soul remains unaffected throughout the whole process. Now you as an individual have two choices. You can either be in nature and just work your way in whatever is thrown around, and you would be caught up in that cycle, or you can step away from that nature and walk in the direction of the soul. This is definitely easier said than done, and that is why the Bhagavad Gita asks you to find out what is your true human nature. See, if we take a look at any parent or any elder for that example, who is actually observing a child at a very, very young age, I'm talking about below 5 or 6, you would start seeing signs of something that is really denoting towards their human nature. Now that nature will slowly develop into something that is their natural inborn talent. Now finding this natural inborn talent is very difficult for us to do even at the age of 40 or 50. Now if we pay close attention to those character traits at a young age, that would enable us to discover what our real talent is. And that is what the Bhagavad Gita tries to communicate through these verses. Now the first step that we need to do in order to follow this is just free our mind, and it will always lead the way. Now that's a wrap for this particular episode. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, do give it a thumbs up, and also make sure you go down and hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. And as always, thank you for watching.